My name is Jordan Hayes, and for 32 years, I've been the shadow in a family that revolved around my younger sister, Isabella. She was the golden child, charismatic, brilliant, the daughter my parents showcased to their wealthy San Francisco circle. I was the scapegoat, blamed for every misstep, ignored for every achievement. This is the story of the most entitled thing I've ever seen. Isabella's audacious lie that nearly destroyed my cousin's daughter Zoe, and how I fought to save her, building a new family from the ruins of the one that never truly accepted me. Isabella's crown. I grew up in a glass-walled mansion in San Francisco's Pacific Heights, where every detail screamed wealth and control. My parents, Richard and Catherine, were pillars of their elite community. My father, a venture capitalist, my mother, a philanthropist with a knack for publicity. They curated a flawless image, and Isabella was their masterpiece. At 15, when I was 17, she was already a star, valedictorian, violin prodigy with cascading black hair and a smile that charmed everyone. Her awards lined the living room, her concert photos adorned the walls, and every dinner party revolved around her latest triumph. I was different. Genderqueer, with a short dyed blue haircut, thrift store clothes, and a quiet defiance that unsettled my parents. I'd known since I was 11 that I didn't fit their binary expectations, but when I came out at 14, my mother called it a stunt, and my father said, "Don't shame us." "Why can't you be more like Isabella?" my mother would snap when I skipped their fundraisers or challenged their values. I was never enough. Too weird, too stubborn, too me. The favoritism was suffocating. Isabella got private music lessons, custom gowns, and trips to international competitions. I got secondhand books, endless chores, and lectures about disappointing the family. If Isabella forgot a performance, it was stress. If I missed a curfew, it was disobedience. She knew she was the favorite and used it like a club. In private, she'd taunt me, calling me the family oddball or the reject. In front of our parents, she was all sweetness, and they'd dismiss her cruelty as sibling teasing. It wasn't teasing, it was a constant reminder that I was less. High school was my escape. I joined the debate team, volunteered at a youth shelter, and wrote for the school blog about social justice. I wasn't Isabella's kind of star, but I was passionate. I won a state debate championship and earned a scholarship to UC Berkeley. When I told my parents, hoping for a flicker of pride, my mother said, "That's nice, Jordan, but Isabella's performing at Carnegie Hall next month. That's our focus." My father didn't even look up from his newspaper. I left for college with a backpack and a vow to build a life where I didn't need their approval. Carving my own path. Berkeley was my salvation. I was Jordan, not Isabella's sibling, not the family failure. I majored in social welfare, interned at a nonprofit for at-risk youth, and found a community that embraced my identity. I started therapy to unpack the PTSD and anxiety from my childhood, panic attacks triggered by my parents' rejection, nightmares of Isabella's taunts. My therapist, Dr. Patel, helped me name the trauma: narcissistic parenting, scapegoating, emotional neglect. I graduated with honors and landed a job as a nonprofit director in San Francisco, running a youth advocacy organization. My office was a cluttered space in the Mission District, filled with posters and case files, but it was mine. Isabella, meanwhile, had stumbled. After Juilliard, she joined an orchestra, but burned out under the pressure. She moved back to San Francisco, living off my parents' money while teaching violin part-time. They still worshipped her, paying her rent, buying her a Tesla, and bragging about her artistic journey. When I visited home for holidays, they'd talk endlessly about Isabella's next concert, ignoring my work securing funding for homeless youth. It hurt, but I'd built a life where their approval wasn't the goal. The secret came to light when I was 31, during a rare family gala at our mansion. Isabella was there with her husband, Victor, a hedge fund manager with a slick smile, and my cousin Elena's daughter, Zoe, 9. Elena, the only family member who'd ever seen me for me, had died 2 years earlier from cancer. Her ex-husband, Paul, had custody of Zoe, but he was unreliable, often ignoring my texts. I tried to stay in Zoe's life, sending books and calling when I could, but Paul made it difficult. At the gala, Isabella was her usual dazzling self, charming the guests with stories of her violin students. But Zoe was quiet, her dark eyes fixed on her plate, her hands fidgeting with a friendship bracelet. I noticed a bruise on her wrist, faint but unmistakable. When I asked her about it, she whispered, "I fell." Isabella quickly changed the subject, but my nonprofit instincts, honed from years of working with vulnerable kids, told me something was wrong. The entitled lie. Later that night, I took Zoe to the mansion's garden, where the city lights glittered against the fog. The air smelled of jasmine and salt, a San Francisco blend. "Zoe," I said gently, "is everything okay with Paul?" She hesitated, then whispered, "He's always drinking. Isabella stays with us sometimes, says she's helping, but she just ignores me or yells when I ask for stuff." My heart stopped. Isabella was involved with Zoe's care? Why hadn't anyone told me? I confronted my parents the next morning in their kitchen, a sleek space of marble and stainless steel that smelled of coffee and croissants. My mother was arranging flowers, her movements sharp, while my father read financial reports on his tablet. "Why is Isabella staying with Paul?" I demanded. My mother froze, her vase clinking against the counter. "She's just helping out," she said, avoiding my eyes. My father snapped, "It's not your business, Jordan. You're always making a fuss." But I pressed, and finally, my mother admitted the truth. Paul had been struggling with alcoholism and neglect, and Isabella had been supervising Zoe for months, funded by my parents. They hadn't told me because they thought I'd judge them. I was floored. Elena's daughter, the girl she'd raised with love, was in Isabella's hands. My parents had chosen their golden child over Zoe's safety, keeping it from me to protect their image. The most entitled thing I'd ever seen was Isabella's lie, claiming she was caring for Zoe while pocketing my parents' money, leaving a vulnerable child in a dangerous home. It wasn't just a betrayal of Zoe, it was a betrayal of me, the one they'd always dismissed. I drove to Paul's apartment that afternoon, a rundown flat in the Tenderloin. The place reeked of stale beer, with trash bags piled in corners and dishes rotting in the sink. Isabella was there, scrolling through her phone while Zoe sat alone, drawing in a notebook. "What are you doing here, Jordan?" Isabella asked, her voice sharp. "Come to play savior again?" "I'm here for Zoe," I said, my voice steady despite the rage inside. "This isn't okay, Isabella. She's not safe here." She laughed, a cold, familiar sound. "You think you're better than me? You're not her parent. I've got this under control." But I saw the fear in Zoe's eyes, the way she clutched her notebook like a shield. She wasn't under control. She was invisible, just like I'd been. Taking a stand. That night, I called Child Protective Services, CPS, reporting suspected neglect. The caseworker, Maria, interviewed Zoe and confirmed my fears. Paul's drinking had escalated, and Isabella was barely present, often leaving Zoe alone or snapping at her to behave. CPS placed Zoe in temporary foster care, and I filed for emergency custody. As a nonprofit director, I'd worked with kids in crisis, but this was personal. I knew the system's flaws, overworked caseworkers, biased courts, but I also knew I couldn't let Zoe stay in that environment. Isabella was furious. She called me, screaming, "You're trying to ruin my life. Mom and Dad trusted me, not you." I hung up, my hands shaking, the PTSD triggering a wave of nausea. Her words echoed my father's from years ago. "You're always making a fuss." The lie cut deeper, knowing my parents had chosen Isabella's ego over Zoe's safety, just as they'd always chosen her over me. I threw myself into the custody battle, using my nonprofit experience to build a case. I documented everything: photos of Paul's apartment, texts from Isabella dismissing Zoe's needs, medical reports noting her bruises. I leaned on Dr. Patel, who helped me manage the anxiety attacks that hit like storms. I was fighting for Zoe, but also for the kid I'd been, the one nobody had fought for. My parents took Isabella's side, as always. They called me ungrateful, accused me of tearing the family apart. "Isabella's trying her best," my mother said. "You've always been jealous of her, Jordan." My father refused to speak to me. Their words stung, but I was done chasing their approval. Zoe was my priority now, and I wouldn't let her down. The courtroom war. The custody battle was grueling. Paul, backed by my parents' money, hired a top-tier lawyer who painted me as an unstable activist with no parenting experience. Isabella testified that she'd been selflessly caring for Zoe, claiming I was motivated by jealousy. My parents took the stand, saying I'd always been defiant and unstable, twisting my PTSD into evidence of unfitness. I fought back with evidence: photos of Paul's apartment, CPS reports, text messages from Isabella telling Zoe to stop whining. I called character witnesses, my deputy director who praised my work with youth, my therapist who testified to my recovery, and Elena's best friend, who confirmed Elena would have wanted me to protect Zoe. Most importantly, I had Zoe's voice. In a closed session, she described Paul's rages and Isabella's neglect, her voice small but clear. Her drawings, dark sketches of a house filled with yelling, broke my heart and swayed the judge. The turning point came when I uncovered Isabella's financial deception. I'd hired a private investigator dipping into my savings and found bank records showing my parents had sent her thousands for Zoe's care, but her social media showed luxury handbags, designer shoes, and trips to Napa Valley. When I presented this in court, Isabella's charm crumbled. She stammered, claiming the money was for family expenses, but the judge wasn't convinced. The judge granted me temporary custody with a plan for permanent guardianship if Paul and Isabella didn't meet CPS requirements. Zoe moved into my Mission District apartment, and for the first time I saw her relax, her shoulders no longer hunched in fear. Building a home. Life with Zoe was a challenge and a gift. I turned my spare room into a space for her, with fairy lights, a desk, and shelves for her books and art supplies. She was wary at first, scared to trust, but we built a routine: school, therapy, art classes. Zoe loved painting, her canvases filling our home with color. My PTSD flared, panic attacks at night, fears of failing her, but Dr. Patel helped me stay grounded. I kept my job, securing grants for youth programs and advocating for foster care reform. My colleagues became my support system, helping with Zoe's school pickups when I was stuck in meetings. Isabella and Paul faded from our lives. Paul failed his sobriety tests, and Isabella lost interest in the parenting classes. My parents tried to guilt me into reconciling, but I set boundaries, refusing to let their toxicity back in. The long road to healing. Over the years, Zoe blossomed. She won school art contests, her paintings reflecting hope and resilience. We built traditions: Friday taco nights, Saturday hikes in Marin, holiday baking sessions where flour ended up everywhere. One day she called me Jordan, then paused and said, "You're like my parent." I hugged her tight, my heart full. My career thrived. I was named San Francisco's Nonprofit Leader of the Year, and I started a youth advocacy network, sharing my story to inspire others. Listeners reached out, sharing their experiences of surviving toxic families. My chosen family, friends, colleagues, Zoe's teachers, became my anchor. My parents softened over time, sending occasional cards, but I kept my distance. Isabella moved to LA, chasing another dream, and I let her go. A new family. At Zoe's high school art show, I watched her present a painting of a lighthouse in a storm, her voice strong and clear. She dedicated it to me, saying, "Jordan showed me how to find light in the dark." I hugged her, tears in my eyes, knowing I'd given her the safety I'd never had. The most entitled thing I've ever seen was Isabella's lie, claiming she was caring for Zoe while pocketing my parents' money, leaving a vulnerable child in a dangerous home. It shattered my illusions about my family, but it gave me Zoe, and a life I'd never dared to dream of. I'm Jordan Hayes, nonprofit director, guardian, survivor, and I've built a family that loves without conditions.